Eli Hoff joins us. He wrote a great article. Eli, sorry about that. He and I traded some text messages at the end of last week and couldn't make it on with us, but glad we got him today. You wrote an article, got a lot of buzz on what Missouri has been doing with spending the NIL, and I mean spending it well. What has been the reaction from that article?
Yeah, there's been a lot of folks who are interested in this, partly because NIL, even though we all know there's a lot of money in this ecosystem and going out there from schools to collectives to athletes. We hadn't really had it pinned down like this before, but we know now Mizzou has spent $31.7 million on NIL in the last year. We know $10 million of that came this past month as they're getting ready for the House settlement to take effect on July 1st and revenue sharing to become a thing. So this is it's gotten a lot of buzz because we now have just one, but a concrete data point when we're talking about NIL.
Well, it is. It's very nebulous out there to even find like, oh, this guy's getting $8 million to come here, and you're like, is he really getting $8 million or what is that? What were this? Was it more or less money than you thought you'd find when you finally got the records?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'd say it was about actually what I expected. These numbers account for 90 to 95% of what all Mizzou athletes were getting. There are some deals, like Luther Burden, a star player is going to have some of his own third-party deals that are different. But this is about what I expected because it takes out some of those crazy figures. But you realize that a lot of these guys are making six-figure salaries to play college sports at this point. So I wouldn't say I was too surprised, but some of that is because I struggle to believe when you hear somebody getting $8 million or you see just some of the zeros that come after this. I struggle to believe those numbers in the first place. So maybe I'm in the minority with that.
Eli, was there anything surprising going past football and men's basketball? Because, the third or fourth sports can always be kind of different depending on the school and the money that's going those directions. So was there anything unique or interesting there for you?
Yeah, for me, just with this being Mizzou's NIL data specifically, it was that baseball was third. If you take a generic SEC school, that wouldn't necessarily be surprising. Baseball, as we saw over the weekend with LSU, right? It's a big deal in that conference. Mizzou has not been good in baseball. It hasn't been a priority, but it was the third highest NIL budget of any sport at Mizzou. So that caught me by surprise just because I keep hearing things here about how little investment there is in Mizzou baseball. A lot of that has to do with the stadium. The stadium is not good and not up to an SEC standard. But in terms of NIL, Mizzou has put the third most of any of its sports in NIL. So that caught me a little by surprise.
So with the story I saw a lot of people we've had on this show, a lot of people saying, hey, this is a deep dive that nobody else has done. So what was this, just a Freedom of Information Act that you were able to send to Missouri?
What do you want?
What's that really good non-alcoholic beer I keep hearing about?
Do you have that really great non-alcoholic beer that I keep seeing?
Do you have a non-alcoholic beer that actually
tastes good?
It's athletic. You're holding it.
You mean athletic? You're looking at it.
I think you mean athletic.
It's athletic. Ask for it.
Yeah, this came from in Missouri, it's called the Sunshine Law, but yeah, Freedom of Information Act, public records. The documents I was able to get were invoices sent to Mizzou by its NIL collective. That's the way it was set up here, that every month the collective would send along an invoice that said, here's how much we're paying athletes for this month to get that money. And in some months it was even broken down by sport. So that was really helpful. It was just PDF pages. It's kind of old fashioned. And then I compiled that into a spreadsheet, but yeah, this was a win for public records.
Did you ever get a copy of an email from Missouri back to the collective that went, what the hell are we doing? What are we spending on who?
I didn't get one of those, but I didn't ask for them either. And if you don't ask for it, they're not going to give it to you in the public records request. So maybe that's the next one. Maybe that's the next document I got to get.
$15 million. He threw 2 touchdown passes or something.
Eli, what do you think that given the information you have now and given the situation that we have with the House settlement, does that change that they're going to spend $31 million or so? I mean, they'll have to take 15 of it from their revenue sharing, but does it still mean, do they think it's actually going to go down?
Yes. So I'm of the belief that it will go down, partly because when we look at the $10 million that was spent this month, for example, that strikes me as sort of a one-time expense, because it's this one-time window where we're going from NIL to revenue sharing. And so you have the chance to front load these contracts. That's not going to be the case anymore. So I think you're going to see the number come down a little bit. Mizzou's going to max out revenue sharing like every other SEC school is. What this tells me is it's going to be difficult for Mizzou and a lot of these schools to get those true third-party NIL deals that will go through the clearinghouse. Knowing that $31 million accounts for 90 to 95% of what Mizzou has, we can do the math in our heads there and know that means there's another $3 million, give or take, in true NIL, and I'm not sure how that stacks up in the SEC. So it gives me maybe more questions than answers about how this will work under revenue share, but I do feel pretty confident that it won't be $31 million just because so much of this is this one-off front loading that a lot of schools are apparently doing, but now we can concretely say Mizzou is.
Missouri was pretty good last year, and they've been, they don't get the attention of Alabama, Georgia, now Texas, LSU, et cetera. But they were really, really pretty good. Where are they now as far as a program with what they have coming back, what they've been able to do to fill the gaps during the transfer portal time, and even what they have coming in from the high school?
This is going to be a challenging season for Eli Drinkwitz and company, because it's the quintessential challenge of college sports. How do you replace talent that left? So Mizzou is replacing starters at almost every skill position player from last year. That's starting quarterback, the top 2 running backs, top 3 wide receivers, replacing a couple spots on the offensive line. That's really difficult to do, but that's what you have to do in college sports. So a lot of it, in my eyes, comes down to Bo Perbila, the transfer from Penn State. He was Drew Aller's backup last year. He's expected to win the starting job at Missouri. We don't really know what he's been, because he's been a backup and a sort of running quarterback for the Nittany Lions. So that's the question there. No Missouri team has ever won 10 games 3 seasons in a row. Mizzou's done it back-to-back years now. The challenge is going for 3. Eli Drinkwitz has been pretty upfront that there's a real challenge with trying to do something that hasn't been done before at a university, and that's what it's going to be. The schedule is favorable, but the situation will be a test for sure.
I have a question for you. Missouri is a part of the SEC, and the pride, the territorial regionalization of what the SEC represents. LSU won another championship in baseball. Where does a school like Missouri fall when it comes to, I hate Alabama, Georgia, Texas, LSU, whatever, but by God, we're proud to be a part of the SEC? Because sometimes I think some of that we're proud to be a part of the SEC is to ride the coattails, but still not like who's winning.
Yeah, that's an interesting way of thinking it, and I think you see it a little bit here. Mizzou is certainly happy to be part of the SEC. That's something we hear all the time from administrators. They're working on a $250 million renovation of the football stadium here, and a lot of the reasoning for that is trying to be competitive from a facility standpoint in the SEC, but also use the privilege, with the financial privilege of being in that conference and the money that comes with it to maximize it. So maybe a little bit of a blessing and a curse there, but in terms of Mizzou fans, a lot of their loyalties are still from the old Big 8 days. So Oklahoma joining the SEC was big for Mizzou fans, because that's a rival coming back in. Mizzou plays Kansas for the first time in more than a decade in football this fall, and that's a game that fans are already counting down towards. So the animosity isn't quite there with the SEC opponents, and maybe there's a little resentment that Mizzou wants to be up there with them. But I think by and large, Mizzou's happy to be in a conference that has a lot of money and has a lot of success going around right now.
Mizzou, Kansas. Whoop, we lost him. Up there you go. Mizzou, Kansas. What's bigger, football or basketball? I don't even think I have to ask that question, but which one's bigger?
It's basketball. There's been some good football games over the year, but that's a basketball. Excuse me. That's a basketball rivalry all the way. Those games have been going for the last few years. There have been the basketball games. Mizzou beat a top-ranked Kansas in December and stormed the court there. That's always going to be the bigger set of those games.
Eli, did you were you surprised? And I'm proud of yourself, too, about the article you wrote, because a lot of people could have asked for that information, and you're the one that did it, and a lot of people noticed it, too.
Yeah, of course. It's one of those things as a reporter that you want to find this stuff out, and NIL has been one of the biggest mysteries of college sports. So I've been covering Mizzou for a couple of years now, and I always wondered this. So of course, I'm glad to be able to be the one to put it out there, because this is a lot of people, a lot of fans, a lot of donors' money going around, and folks should know where that's going and what this looks like. So yeah, certainly glad to get it out there, but I'm even more glad that people actually care, because I could just be a nerd looking at this stuff in my free time, but everybody likes it.
It was a job well done. My favorite part of once you posted the story was when somebody asked Grok about the spending per sport, and your response, thank God, because I love this, or you could click on the link. Yeah, I noticed that. Good for you to say that. Thanks for your time, buddy. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Eli Hoff from the St. Louis Post-Dispatch on the story.